Hi, Thomas. Since you had a couple of questions about the assignment, I wanted to give you your feedback like this instead of writing it, so it'd be easier for me to address the question that you had. So first up, the first page, it looked really good. A lot of stuff looks really nice. I would say, one thing I see here early on that I see throughout the stuff is, for example, we've got something that's definitely kind of like a few of these are definitely kind of rotated around. And so when we make something with the polygon tool, um, regardless of how big it is, we can hold down shift and it will align it to the document basically, so that instead of being a little bit crooked like this one is, it will be straight with the document, which means that you can then rotate it along 45-degree angles and generally get things to line up better. The other thing would be just it looks like these are all aligned vertically, but we can kind of spread things out a little bit more nicely on here. So stuff like that where we want to draw it, whoops, kind of a little bit straighter the first time in these cases, and in these cases we can, whoops, sorry, I'm pressing hotkeys incorrectly because I'm still used to working in 3D. But yeah, we can have these kind of more evenly spaced out, even by hand. All right, so but otherwise this is a really good looking sheet. For this one, this is actually, there's more problems here than there is on the birdcage. The birdcage is actually, I mean, it's very simple, but it's pretty well constructed. I'd say the biggest thing I'm noticing is that some of these things are, a little bit crooked. So we can, maybe try to straighten these out a little bit, line them up a little bit more nicely. I noticed I'm trying to do this, but it's snapping to something. Under view, snap to point, I can turn that off. I can zoom in a little bit. That will also help. And so when I go to, there we go, move this, you can see I kind of straighten that out a little so that it would be a little bit more horizontal. I use my arrow keys and I shift that over just a little bit, kind of put it more in the middle, assuming that this is the middle. It may not be. And then I look at these arcs here and I wonder, were they, that wasn't the thing in the middle. This actually wants to be over here, and then this is something that needs to shift. But at any rate, this is, like I said, this is simple. There's no swirls on here. There's no embellishments, but it's a pretty solid start. I mean, we did just learn this program. So as far as, first attempts at something go, I'm sitting here going like, well, how can we straighten these things out a little bit, right? There's nothing particularly broken, and the stuff that you did make is pretty well done. This one's giving me trouble getting straightened out, so I can always delete it. Select another piece. Just kidding. Hello? There we go. Ah, this is two pieces. This one's one piece. So I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm just going to drag this. I'm going to hold down Shift, and it'll move around, and we can see that it's nice and perfectly horizontal. So there's, once you make one, you don't have to redraw them. In fact, this is one right here that I would probably get rid of because, we don't want to have two different pieces. Now, these are all the same. This is great. I believe this one is 2, and this one, yeah. So I can just hold down Alt. Hello? There we go. Hold down Shift. So we don't need to remake it every time. Rather than redrawing things every time, we want to draw it once and then make a few changes. All right, and I would say it's the same thing with these arches. I'd say one of the reasons, I'm trying to figure out like where the center is, and one of the reasons it's kind of hard is because this is not the same as this. This is two different arches. And so what we want to do, this may even be different than this one. So I can take this one and I can hit Control C to copy, Control Shift V to paste. It puts a copy of it in place. Right click, transform, reflect. And I choose this reflection here. And it makes an exact copy, but it reverses it. And so I can move this over here like this. And then I would do the same thing here. Control C to copy. Or actually, we'll do the menu this time. So we'll do edit, copy, edit, paste in place. And then I believe, yes, object, transform, reflect. Then we hit OK. And so now I know that these two pieces are identical, which might mean that this has to get moved a little bit to make it match with over here. And that's fine, because we can always kind of shift these things around a little bit. And so we kind of build it like that, where we build piece by piece, and maybe the first time you make it, it doesn't quite go the way you want, and so we just redo it a little bit. Yeah, definitely this has to move over. And now it's a bit more symmetrical. And even if you were to zoom in and maybe see like there's a little bit of, overlap going on up here that we can't see, but can you see it from back here? That's the important thing, because that's even 150%. 100%, this is 100%. You can't really see that area up at the top. I can see that it's a little bit off at the bottom. That's easy enough to fix. There we go. Well, no. I know why. Here's a little trick. So when I move this, oh no, never mind. It's trying to align with this. So when I moved it, it snapped. So you got to kind of like sometimes move something out, let it snap into place, and then move it back out again. Like, so you kind of move it, it goes too far, then you move it back out, and it should match a little bit better. But using things like copying and pasting and nudging and nope, should get it much closer, and then we can kind of back out and see if we can see the little bit of a difference there, and we can't again. So yeah, I know you said you had a bit of a hard time with this. It looks pretty good. It's very simple, but there wasn't too much that was very broken. What I wanted to show you though was this one, because there's a couple things that worry me a little bit in here. The biggest one is that so many of these pieces are not square to anything anymore. They maybe used to be, they're definitely not. So if we look at whatever this is, that has been rotated more than 45. This is different. This is off. This is this looks like it's been skewed. And we want to avoid that. None of that was necessary to make these fit with anything. You needed to be careful about moving them. Now, normally I would say, we'll go up here. You can find the originals, but these are altered too, a lot of them. This has been made bigger. This is not the wrong size. It's also rotated around a little bit crazy. Now I can go over here and I can tell the rotation to go to 0, which helps with the rotation. So you can zero out rotations on some of these things by using the properties, but you can't undo the fact that this got bigger. And we can't undo the fact that this got skewed. And so that's why when we were in the directions, I was very specific. I said, whoops, we don't need that. I said for all these pieces, they're on a layer called original pieces, and I asked you to make a copy of that layer. I'm going to open up a fresh file to show you. So here's the original file that everyone got for class, and one of the instructions that we wanted to follow was to look at here and see that, oh, just kidding, original pieces, there we go. So I went over the fact that we can delete this group if we want to, that little shadow group that doesn't need to be there. So we can click here to select, nope, just kidding, we gotta unlock it. Click here to select it, hit delete, and that leaves us with these pieces. And we want to use our layers. We're going to select this, and we're going to we're going to go to the hamburger menu, and we're going to say duplicate original pieces. And then we can double click this, and we can say, duck. assuming I guess this is a duck. They all look like ducks. But I can then click this radial button to select all these pieces, move them down here, and that's what I use for this one. And then that way we'd end up with 6 different layers that were all called like duck, swan, chicken, crane, turtle, cat, whatever you wanted to call them, um, to at least know, they were all different from each other. With yours, it's very difficult to work in because everything is on the same layer. So it's just 100 little pieces that are on this one layer. And also, the original pieces are no longer here. So in my version, I can accidentally, mess something up. Maybe I click a wrong button, because we're learning about stuff, and I rotate it or I scale it or I accidentally skew it. I hit a hotkey that accidentally squashes it. I could delete this piece, go up here, and drag out a copy. And it's a fresh copy, right? So it's one that hasn't been squashed or anything. So that was another reason that I really wanted you guys to use layers. And so that for me is a very important piece that's missing here. And layers are going to be very important in the other things that we're doing. So if I say, make sure you have separate layers and make sure you have separate folders, you're really, really, really going to want to do that. So to kind of summarize, I know you said you had trouble with the bird cage. It looks pretty good in the long run. Again, simple of it, the simplest version of it possible, but it was pretty well executed. Here, however, I do see things that worry me. Nearly every piece is skewed or not rotated along 90 degrees. I can tell from here that you weren't holding shift when you were rotating any of these pieces. We want to, when we're rotating these pieces, to match. Let's say I'm like, oh, I need this to fit in here. Hold down shift and it rotates 90 degrees. And then I use my arrow keys to move it. Now, I don't know if that's actually where that goes. I don't think it is. But it at least, again, hold down shift. Oh, that is where it went. This at least, gives me something clean to work off of. There we go. I know everything is like square to each other. Whereas if we just kind of freehanded, it doesn't work out so well. And you can tell here because these things are not lined up with each other, and it becomes more and more difficult to line things up with each other when they're all a little bit off. Like these two pieces, they're exactly in the right spot. That is if we want to talk about solutions to puzzles, this is the solution to that puzzle. However, they're never going to line up because if you don't hold down shift while you're rotating these pieces, it's very difficult to get it back to square. And we're going to talk about this more later, but when it comes to computers, they're so precise that they kind of give away the fact that things are square or not square. Do you know what I mean? Like they make it obvious when things don't line up. And so we have to either line them up properly, which means rotating this a little bit. No. Or we need to make them very far askew. We need to like really outdo this. I can also tell that this one got bigger because it is much bigger than the other one. And those are supposed to be the same shape. So this shouldn't be this much bigger. I think it's also skewed. So as you're working in this, you'll want to be, yeah, it's been kind of squashed. You want to be careful what buttons you're pressing. Shift will constrain, your rotations to 45-degree angles. It will also constrain when you're scaling things, although make sure you're not scaling if you don't need to be. And whatever it was you were doing to kind of skew these things, we don't want to do that. We want to make sure we're maintaining our shapes and having control over the pieces.